Alright, as you can probably tell from the title of this video, we're going to take the TBH video journal in a little bit different direction today, and we're going to talk about kayaks. And specifically, we're going to talk about these kayaks, which were truly an impulse purchase that I made last Friday. So I want to tell you a little bit about those, give you my first impressions. It's not going to be an intensive review, comprehensive review. I bought it last Friday. I've taken it out 3 different times, so I've only got a little bit of experience with it, but I want to give you my first impression view of what I like and what I don't like about these kayaks. Before I get into the dimensions and the specifics of this kayak and what I like and a few things that I don't like, let me tell you the purpose that I decided to buy them. As you may have seen in some of the past few journals, I've been doing a little bit more camping, a little bit more gear testing, trying to try out a few different things. I'm going to probably do some backpacking type trips, but with my wife having some knee issues and some back issues, backpacking is not really something that she could do with me. In addition, it gets to the 100-degree mark here in the summer in Texas, and so hiking is brutal. Naturally, I started thinking about some things that we could do together. Water sports is a natural one. Floating the river, you've seen some videos where we've done some river floats, and kayaking, of course. We've done some kayaking when we lived up in Paris, up in Oklahoma on the Mountain Forks River, and we really enjoyed it. We did some things like that with our church group, something that we really enjoyed, so I knew that we would enjoy kayaking. That said, this past weekend we had already decided that we were going to go to Palmetto State Park, rent kayaks, do a little paddle trip, stop at the park, just do a little overnight camping trip, and so we already had that planned. I had a business meeting in Houston on Friday. On the way back from that meeting, I decided to stop into Dick's Sporting Goods and the Field and Stream store, and I just happened to mosey over to the kayak section, looking around at the different options and prices, and I took notice of this kayak that was with some of the other higher end kayaks, higher dollar kayaks, and they had it priced at $299. And so at that price point, as I got to doing some research, I actually left there, went to Bass Pro, went to eat lunch, did some calling around, and ultimately decided to go back and purchase not 1 kayak, but 2. I decided to call Palmetto State Park and find out how much it costs to rent a kayak. It was $32 a day, but you have to turn in by 4 o'clock that same afternoon. In order to do the paddle and camp trip that I wanted to do, I felt like I was going to have to rent 2 kayaks for $32 a day, or $64 a piece, or $128 for the 2 for both days. In addition, the family and I have talked about going this summer to the Durango area, back where you may have seen I've done a couple of videos from there before, and doing some fishing on the San Juan River, renting some kayaks, doing some float trips. I got online, checked at kayak rentals at area libraries around that place, and the place that I checked was $59 a day. So as you can see, it almost became a no-brainer that it wouldn't take long to pay for themselves at that price point. So I decided to make the purchase. I've tested it out, like I say, 3 different times. We ended up going on the San Marcos River. We didn't go to Palmetto State Park, but did go to a buddy's place. We did a 6-hour float on Saturday, stopped down at a friend's family place. He's got 7 acres that are right there on the river. We set up camp right there under a tarp, spent the night there on Saturday night, and then up and left on Sunday. Additionally, my daughter Hannah and I took the kayaks out just to the Guadalupe River, about 30 miles from here. Yesterday, did a couple of hours just paddling around, just getting used to them, testing them out, checking a few different things. And then this afternoon, my wife and I went back. We paddled the Independence Trail, which is one of the paddle trails here in Texas. Now these kayaks are made by Future Beach, and they're called the Angler 144 Deluxe. They're 12 feet long, they're 30 inches wide, and I think they weigh right at about 65, maybe 66 pounds. All right, so first let me tell you the things that I really like about these kayaks. And the number one thing, obviously, is the price. Honestly, I wouldn't have made the purchase for 1, much less 2, if I didn't find them at the price at $299. The regular price at Dick's was $599. The MSRP, I think, is listed at $759 or something like that. Amazon, if you check the price on Amazon, they're $829. So to be able to pick up a kayak for $299 was almost a no-brainer. I decided to go ahead and pick up 2 because I felt like this is something that my wife, my kids, and I could enjoy, and it wouldn't take long to get the value out of them. Reading reviews online on Amazon and some of the other reviews on Dick's Sporting Goods website, and just other reviews that I've read on these, they have great reviews. People talk about what a great value kayak that they are, even at the $480 to $550 price range. I would agree with that. After using them 3 times, I think it's an exceptional value even at a $500 price tag, and certainly a great value at almost a steal at the $299. So price obviously is the only reason that I purchased them, but at that price I'm tempted to go get more for additional family members so that my girls can go with us. Second thing that I really like about these kayaks is that they're extremely stable. They're 30 inches wide, they're made with a dihedral hull design. The first time I took it out, I went ahead and put all my camera gear inside the storage, which I'll talk about in a minute, put it in dry bags. I didn't want it up top with me until I was able to test out the kayak. After about 30 minutes on the river, and testing it out and rocking it back and forth and making some maneuvers, I realized that it was plenty stable. I pulled my camera gear out, which of course I kept when I wasn't using, in dry bags. I don't think you could really turn these over unless you intentionally turn them over. You can certainly fall out of them, but unless you have a running current that's running sideways. And I will tell you, my wife, we did the 6-hour float on the San Marcos River. We finished that float, got back to my buddy's place, and then we decided to go back around a little island that they have. And while we were doing that, my wife got sideways. There were some overhanging branches which caught the side of the kayak. The rushing water, it was a pretty good current. Rushing water knocked her out, tipped the thing over, and then of course the current picked up the kayak and got it hung up and got it, and turned it sideways. So in that instance, yes, it did turn over, but that was more of a mistake on her part. Any kayak that she would have been in, I have no doubt would have turned over. Other than that, on the entire 5.5-hour trip, we didn't have any instances of turning over. I did have one little scare where I was jacking with my phone, floated into some trees backwards. I wasn't really worried about tipping over. I was more worried about getting hung up and having some issues and losing some gear. So other than that, extremely stable. I'm really impressed with that aspect of it. I stood up in it to fish a little bit today, was able to stand and cast, not comfortably necessarily. I'm a little more top heavy than some other people may be, but it was very stable. I've seen where people have bow fished and stood up fishing out of it. I think with a little practice, you certainly could get better at it. So moving on, the next thing I really like about it is the storage capacity, both up top and down below in the hull. As you can see, it's got a little waterproof cover at the main storage area up front. In there, I actually put in 2 different rod and reels, full size 6.5 foot, maybe even a 7-foot rod, and a spin cast reel. Bought a new spin and reel ultralight combination that I was able to put down in there. So each of these kayaks had 2 different rods when we did our trip on Sunday. I put hammocks, tarps in both of them, my backpack, dry gear. I've got a couple of poles that I use for mounting my GoPros. That went down in here. You could put tarps, tents, any backpacking gear. The weight capacity on this kayak is 420 pounds. I weigh just over 200 pounds, 200-ish pounds. But as you can see, I could store way more gear than what I need. And again, if I'm wanting to do paddle and camp in preparation for backpacking hunts, I want to try to keep my weight as light as possible anyway. So I'm not at all worried about this. We're looking at doing the future trips up to Colorado. I'm going to do a trip up to Arkansas in sometime over the summer. We took coolers, took a milk crate, had all kind of gear that we had stacked on top, and then of course in the back it's got another little storage access, which may not be completely waterproof. When Jeanette turned her kayak over, the rushing water did get a little bit of water down in the hull. So anything that I do keep in here, even though it's mostly waterproof, I will keep in quality dry bags. Okay, so the next important consideration in kayaking is how well does it track? Now, these don't have a skeg and they don't have a rudder, and so they're not going to track as well as a boat that does have a skeg and a rudder. But we did some testing on these, floating down current, cross current. Today, half the trip that we did on the Independence Paddle Trail is paddling up current, and these things track really well. I didn't have any problems at all. I haven't been on a kayak with a skeg. I haven't been on a kayak with a rudder, and so I don't really know how it compares, but I can tell you I didn't have any issues at all. Jeanette didn't have any issue at all, and Hannah, who's 15 years old, didn't have any issues at all either. And so I haven't had it on really open water down at the coast, any of that kind of thing, so I'll reserve judgment on that. Even though we fish on the coast and we've got access, we fish down in Port Isabel, Port Mansfield, Port O'Connor, all along the Gulf Coast. The primary purpose was not fishing, but I also wanted to be equipped to be able to do some fishing, and this one is. It's got a Scotty mount so that you can put a rod holder right up here in the front, and then it's got two flush mount rod holders right here in the back. Again, I started out last Saturday with two full-size 7-foot rods, 6.5-foot rods with bait casting reels stuck up in there. I went ahead and pulled them down when they kind of got hung up in trees there on the river. But the great thing is I was able to store them right down up underneath here. There's plenty of places for tackle. Again, there's plenty of places to put a fishing box, mounts. I'll probably put some rails on here so that I can have some interchangeable type mounts, but I wouldn't hesitate to take this fishing. I did a little fishing on our float trip today. I caught my first kayak fish, caught a little catfish on a chrome and blueback rattle trap. So it is a fishable craft. It's not rigged out like a lot of the fishing vessels that you see that they call kayaks, but it is certainly have the ability to fish, and especially on the float trips that I want to do down rivers. Now, as far as handling goes, handled reasonably well for a 12-foot kayak. It's certainly not nimble as some of the smaller 8-foots and some of the things that you're going to do, but I didn't purchase this to go over anything more than Class 2 rapids. I think it's rated for Class 2, up to Class 2, but again, on the trips that I'm envisioning, I don't anticipate doing anything that's much beyond that. All right, so a couple things that I don't like about it. First off is the seat. It really doesn't come with a seat. It's a seat molded in, and they come with a little padded seat back that you can put in there, but I could tell right away that that was not going to be very comfortable, so I went ahead and made the investment in a little $39 Harmony seat. We've used those the first 3 times that we did it. We were able to paddle the 6-hour float, not really an issue. I wouldn't say it's the most comfortable, but it certainly wasn't necessarily uncomfortable. But I think without the third-party seat add-on, that would have definitely been a little bit more difficult to do. One of the things that I've seen online is a stadium seat. One of the smaller stadium seats fits right in here, and so I'm probably going to try that on at least one of these. So I'll do a little review on that if I decide to make that and if it works. But for now, these seats work perfectly fine for the little day trips that we've done. Now on a 4-day float, I don't know. I may want to try to find something a lot more comfortable before I attempt a 4-day float. Okay, and so the only other thing that I can think of right now that I really don't like, well, these little straps, you know, it's got handle straps right here on the sides, one on either side, and then one in the front, one in the back, right here. They're not real heavy duty. I kind of worry about how long they last. These are flat straps. I may replace them with a little bit more heavy duty and something a little more rounded, a little more comfortable for carrying the kayak. And that brings me to the other thing that I kind of don't like about it, and it's a little bit heavy. It's 66 pounds empty weight. Of course, once you get it loaded up, makes it a little bit heavier. Not a problem. We didn't have any problem. I think it definitely handles the weight well. Again, the capacity on it's 420 pounds. We didn't have any problems going over little shallow areas. Didn't have to get out and drag across anything. It doesn't necessarily sit low in the water. The problem is if you're going to do a float trip that has any extended portages and you have a bunch of gear in here, just like with backpacking, weight, you know, every gram counts, every ounce counts. So at 66 pounds, I think this is a little bit heavier than a lot of comparison kayaks. Not outrageous, but it is a little bit heavy. We had one little portage on Saturday where we had to go around a blown down tree. Jeanette and I were able to do it, but of course we had bison coolers loaded up on the back of it full of beverages, ice, and so that made it a little bit heavier. It was only about a 50 or 60 yard portage that we had to do to get around the tree, but it was pretty heavy. Of course, loaded down with all of our gear and all of the cooler and the beer and the ice and all of the associated stuff that goes with it. But we were able to do it. We had to make 2 different trips. I have picked these up empty and picked them up, threw them over my shoulder, and walked around the yard with it, so it is doable in a situation where you had to do a portage. Certainly you could put everything in a backpack, throw it over your back, and do it in multiple trips. One of the other things I don't like about it and the storage is these little access points right here. Sometimes can be a little bit stubborn and difficult to get off. The grips on them are very difficult. I think they warp and bend a little bit, and so sometimes you got to kind of pop on them to get them to come over. But so far I've been able to do that. So it's got molded foot pegs instead of the adjustable foot deal. These are actually a little more comfortable than what I expected them to be. I thought, you know, I keep mine right in here normally, and I thought maybe with my legs laying on that it would get uncomfortable, but so far I haven't had that issue, and they work reasonably well. Now, just to put a wrap on it, it's starting to lose a little bit of light, but to wrap things up, I think this is an outstanding kayak, and especially at the price point for $299. If I see them on sale for that price again, I'll probably pick up a couple more, so that I'll have some for the girls. I know some other people that are looking for them, and I think this is an exceptional value. Again, even at the $450, $500, $550 price range, I think it's as good as anything in that price range as well. I've been really impressed, not just because it's $299. I've been really impressed with the performance of the kayak for the first 3 trips. I think to get anything that I would want to upgrade to, I'd have to spend $1,200+, and I'm just not ready to do that for the purpose and for the intended use that I have. So at the price point that these are at, I think it's an exceptional value for a multi-purpose all-around kayak that you can use for recreation, use for camping, paddling trips, and use for fishing, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it. Of course, that's after 4 days of ownership, so that may change after time, and if that does, then I'll certainly report back. But anyway, I appreciate you joining me on this edition, and those of you that stuck with me, hopefully you had a little bit of an interest in kayaks. I do have some trips planned where I want to do some float trips and do some filming and incorporate those into the video journal. Obviously the video journal started out from TexasBowhunter.com, and so naturally most of what I do is going to be bow hunting, some fishing, but also want to expand that to do some more backpacking, camping, hiking, kayaking, water sports, anything outdoor related. So you never know what you might see. So I appreciate you joining me, and I hope we'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe. I know I post these up on Facebook, and most of you came over from TexasBowhunter.com, but we are starting to see an expanded audience, and I will start to do some giveaways to try to get more subscribers. So I encourage you to subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you on the next one.